Get your hands off my patient wing. Maintenance doesn't breathe the same air as my donors. You smell like a boiler room. Gah, ma'am. The pipe burst above the east corridor. I kept the water off the new flooring. Gah. Did I ask for a story? Kneel down and mop that puddle before someone important slips. Gah. You should be very careful who you send to their knees, Miss Thornberry. Security. Remove this man before I lose my appetite. Gah. Good morning, Miss Thornberry. Sit down. You look like you've seen a ghost. Gah, you. How are you in this chair? Gah, because I purchased it, along with every chair, every wing, and every job in this building, including yours. 5 in the morning, downtown Charleston. The Belcourt Medical Center stood 9 stories tall on Calhoun Street, its limestone face catching the first pale edge of dawn. Inside the basement, one man worked alone. Deacon Merritt, 43 years old, gray coveralls, steel-toed boots with a cracked left sole. He pushed a utility cart down the service tunnel beneath the radiology wing, its wheels squeaking on concrete that hadn't been resurfaced since the building opened in 1974. The fluorescent lights buzzed a half-tone flat. Somewhere above him, a ventilation fan ticked like a slow clock. He stopped at junction C4 and checked the pipe coupling he'd flagged last Tuesday. Still leaking, a slow drip into a plastic bucket he'd placed there himself because the work order had been sitting in the system for 11 weeks. He emptied the bucket into a floor drain, dried the coupling with a rag, and wrote the date on the wall in pencil beside 4 other dates. 5 weeks of drips. Nobody had come. On Deacon's left wrist sat a watch that belonged to his mother. Pearl face, thin gold band, one tiny scratch across the 6. Alma Merritt wore it every shift for 22 years in this building. She was a nurse's aide, night rotation, 3rd floor geriatrics. She bathed patients who couldn't bathe themselves, changed linens at 2 in the morning, held hands when the morphine wasn't enough. The hospital gave her a plastic plaque when she retired and misspelled her name. ALMA became ALNA. She never corrected them. She just hung it above the stove and said, "Baby, they remember the work even when they forget the woman." She died 14 months ago. Deacon wore the watch. By 6, the building woke in layers. Deacon greeted the night security guard, Mr. Hayward, whose grandson had just made the JV baseball team. He nodded at Miss Trahan in the cafeteria, who saved him a biscuit every morning wrapped in a paper napkin with a smiley face drawn on it. He knew that the 2nd-floor janitor, a quiet man named Eldon, sent half his paycheck to a sister in Port-au-Prince and never talked about it. People in coveralls learn a building's bloodstream. Nobody ever asks them what they feel. 2 elevators served the Belcourt. The front one had brass doors and a glass panel. It carried physicians, administrators, and families clutching insurance paperwork. The service elevator in the back had a dent in the left wall and smelled permanently of bleach. It carried laundry carts, meal trays, and people the brass doors never saw. Deacon rode the back one. He listened. In 4 months, he had learned more from that elevator than any quarterly report could hold. Nurses doubling shifts because the night pool had been cut. A radiology tech crying in the supply closet after being written up for asking about overtime. Names that disappeared from the schedule the week after they filed complaints. A pattern so clean it could have been drawn with a ruler. At 6:30, his phone buzzed in the mechanical room. He shut the door before answering, a woman's voice, precise and unhurried. "The Axton Group signed at 4 this morning, Singapore time. We close Thursday. Are you still sure about this?" Deacon looked at the rows of water valves, each one labeled in his own handwriting, because the original tags had rusted off years ago. "1 more week," he said. "The gala is Saturday. I need to see her when she thinks every camera is a mirror." He put the phone away and picked up a wrench. At 7:15, the front doors swung open, and Candace Thornberry arrived the way weather arrives. Sudden, total, and indifferent to whatever had been standing in its path. Heels on marble, phone at her ear, a to-go cup in her other hand. She crossed the lobby without breaking stride, and the cup, half finished, left her hand in a low arc toward the trash bin near the elevator. It missed by 2 feet and rolled across the floor, Deacon had buffed an hour ago, leaving a trail of oat milk latte across the stone. She did not look down. She never did. Deacon bent, picked up the cup, wiped the trail with a rag from his back pocket, and said nothing. Candace Thornberry, executive director of the Belcourt Medical Center for 8 years. Bored darling, magazine profile. Her smile had raised $14 million in donations since she took the chair. Her staff turnover rate was the highest in the hospital network, but that number lived in a spreadsheet no donor ever opened. The people who emptied her trash tracked her moods the way sailors track barometric pressure, silently, urgently, and from a safe distance. That week, every conversation in the building circled one event, the Belcourt Heritage Gala. Every October, Candace transformed the hospital's rooftop terrace into something that looked like it cost more than the pediatric wing. Last year it did. Crystal Stemware, a 12-piece jazz ensemble, auction items ranging from a weekend in Hilton Head to a painting donated by a gallery owner who needed his cholesterol managed quietly. 200 guests. Black tie. The stated cause was funding for the hospital's charity care program. The beds reserved for patients who couldn't pay. The unstated cause was Candace Thornberry, lit from every angle, standing where the money was thickest. A clipboard in the maintenance office asked for volunteer support staff. Extra hands, longer hours, one night under the stars. Deacon signed his name at the bottom. The floor supervisor, a woman named Birdie, who had worked the Belcourt since before Candace was hired, looked at the name and then at Deacon. You sure? She gets mean at those things. Champagne and an audience. Bad combination. Deacon clicked the pen shut. I've been around mean before. I want to see it dressed up. Saturday evening came in gold and salt air. The sun dropped behind the harbor, and the first town cars rolled up the hospital's circular drive. Deacon buttoned a clean service jacket in the staging tent on the 9th floor, surrounded by crates of glassware and the green smell of fresh-cut gardenias. Through the tent flap, he watched waiters arrange towers of flutes on white linen. The jazz ensemble tuned. Laughter sharpened like something being unsheathed. 200 guests, 2,000 watts of string lights, and one maintenance man nobody had planned to notice. The night had no idea what it was carrying. The rooftop glowed. String lights wove through wrought iron trellises and draped across the parapet like low stars. White tablecloths snapped in the harbor breeze. Waiters in black moved between clusters of guests, carrying crab cakes on slate tiles and glasses of something French. Charleston's wealthiest filled the space. Hospital board members, real estate heirs, a retired federal judge, 2 state senators, and at the center of all of it, in a midnight blue gown with a slit that caught the light like a blade, stood Candace Thornberry. Deacon worked the perimeter. His assignment was simple: keep the service stations stocked, haul ice from the freight elevator, clear broken glass before anyone stepped in it. He carried a crate of champagne flutes from the elevator to the bar station, 40 pounds of crystal balanced on his shoulder. Sweat ran down his neck under the service jacket. He did not mind. You learn where a machine fails by standing close enough to hear it grind. Near the dessert table, he met Jalen Price, 20 years old, a hospital orderly moonlighting, catering to cover his mother's prescription costs. Jalen moved fast and apologized to everyone, including the tablecloths. Deacon steadied a tray for him before it tilted. "You're the maintenance guy," Jalen said. "3rd floor, the one who fixed Mrs. Calhoun's call button when nobody else would come." Deacon smiled. She shouldn't have to wait. Nobody should. Jalen almost laughed, then caught himself, the way people do when kindness surprises them at work. At 9, Candace took the microphone on the raised platform at the north end of the terrace. The spotlight hit her, and she opened her arms like she was receiving the night itself. She spoke about compassion, about the sacred duty of healing, about how the Belcourt existed to serve those who had nothing. Her voice broke in all the rehearsed places. 190 phones rose to record her. Behind the bar station, Deacon stacked ice and listened to a woman describe a mercy he had never once seen her practice. The live auction moved fast. A beach house week. a private dinner with a celebrity chef, a naming opportunity on the new surgical suite. That one went for $300,000. Paddle raised by a man who had never set foot inside the building. On the screen behind Candace, photos of smiling children in hospital beds rotated on a loop. No one asked their names. The children were wallpaper. The money was applause converted into a currency Candace could wear. Then the auction wound down and the bourbon flowed heavier. Near the East Service Station, a tray of red wine ran dry. A waiter flagged Deacon. Just one trip. 20 feet from the cart to the table. Deacon lifted the tray and started across the parquet edge of the dance floor. Lights swirled. Perfume layered the air thick as fog. He was 6 steps from the table when it happened. A tall man in a tuxedo stepped backward into a knot of conversation, gesturing wide with a rocks glass in each hand. His elbow caught the tray dead center. 8 glasses of Cabernet launched into the night air and came down on the white runner, on the sleeve of a woman's beaded jacket, and across the front of Deacon's service coat. The crash cut through the jazz like a cymbal nobody asked for. The ensemble stopped. 200 heads turned. The man who caused it laughed nervously, said "whoops," and vanished into the crowd without offering a napkin. Deacon was already on his knees gathering glass, stacking shards on the tray with careful hands. The woman in the beaded jacket dabbed her sleeve and said, "Oh, honey, it's fine. Don't worry about it." It could have ended there. A mop, a towel, 10 quiet minutes. But the spotlight was already moving. Candace crossed the terrace with the microphone still live, her gown whispering across the stone. She looked at the stain. She looked at Deacon kneeling in it, and she smiled the way a person smiles when they've found something small enough to step on. She raised the mic, and her voice carried across the entire rooftop. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I see our custodial staff has decided to redecorate. Apparently, the dress code said Cabernet. Thin laughter, nervous laughter, the kind that looks for permission before it breathes. Deacon stood. "Ma'am, a guest bumped the tray. I'll have this cleaned in 5 minutes." Candace's eyebrows rose. She turned to the crowd, delighted. Did everyone hear that? The mop boy talks back. She let the laughter build, then leaned toward him with theatrical curiosity. "Tell us your name, slowly, so we can all hear who ruined my evening." Deacon Merritt. Maintenance. Night shift. Maintenance. She tasted the word like it had gone sour. And who told maintenance it could walk among my donors? You smell like a pipe fitting. You're offending the air worse than the carpet. A few guests shifted their weight. Most kept their phones raised. Near the dessert station, Jalen Price lifted his phone with shaking hands and pressed record. She pointed at the stains spreading under the lights. "Do you have any idea what this runner cost?" Hand-loomed, Italian, $12,000. "That's more than you'll make this quarter, isn't it?" She didn't wait for an answer. "Of course it is. My Gardenia budget is more than your annual salary." Her voice dropped to something colder, something she kept stored below the boardroom polish. "My mother used to say, you can put a wrench in a tuxedo. It's still a wrench." She stepped closer. "You want to keep this job? Get on your knees and scrub that stain. Now, use your jacket if you have to." The rooftop went silent. The harbor breeze carried the sound of a distant ship horn. Nothing else moved. Deacon looked at the stain, then at her. He knelt, not because he was broken, because some men can kneel without ever bending. He folded a service towel and worked the wine in slow, careful circles. Candace watched him for 3 seconds. Then she lifted a fresh glass of champagne from a passing waiter's tray, held it directly over Deacon's head and tilted it, slowly, all the way. Golden liquid ran through his hair, down the back of his collar, and into the carpet he was already cleaning. "Oops," she said into the microphone. "My hand slipped. Somebody get this man a mop." "Oh, wait, he is the mop." Nobody laughed. Not this time. Somewhere near the bar, a fork was set down on a plate with a click that sounded louder than it should have. A camera flash went off. Near the railing, a board member named Dr. Lorraine Ketch lowered her glass and did not pick it up again. She had sat on hospital boards for 30 years. She had seen executives behave badly at every one of them. She had never seen anything like this. In the service line, a waiter leaned toward Jalen. Someone should stop this. Nobody did. 200 of the most connected people in South Carolina stood under charity lights and studied the harbor skyline as though the answer to their silence was somewhere out on the water. Deacon rose. Champagne dripped from his jaw. He set the towel down with steady hands, squared his shoulders, and met her eyes. The silence stretched taut, enough to hum. Candace mistook it for applause. She always did. She spun to the crowd, arms wide. People like him fix pipes and mop floors. They don't belong among my guests, and as of tonight, he doesn't belong among my employees either. She turned back to Deacon and let every word land like a gavel. You're fired, not by email, not by HR. Right here, right now, in front of everyone who matters. Consider it a public service. She snapped her fingers toward the security station. Briggs, get this man off my rooftop. Leon Briggs came through the crowd like a wall with an earpiece, head of hospital security. Candace's shadow on legs. 2 guards flanked him. He gripped Deacon's arm hard enough to leave marks. Deacon did not pull away. He looked past Briggs, straight at Candace, and spoke in a voice so low the microphone barely caught it. You should be very careful who you send to their knees, Miss Thornberry. Something flickered behind her eyes. Then the champagne and the spotlight washed it away. A threat? She laughed into the mic. From a pipe fitter? Security. Now, the jazz ensemble started again on her cue, something bright and forced. The party lurched back to life like a car on a bad starter. 2 guards walked Deacon Merritt across the longest rooftop in Charleston. The walk to the elevator took 2 minutes. Deacon kept his back straight the whole way. Champagne dried sticky on his neck. Behind him the music played, but the laughter never found its rhythm again. Guests parted as he passed, eyes sliding sideways, the way people avoid looking at an accident they helped create. They were 10 feet from the elevator when Briggs's radio crackled. Candace's voice came through, bright with champagne. One more thing, Leon. Check his bag. Maintenance people always walk out with something that isn't theirs. Briggs smiled. He held up one hand and the procession stopped. You heard her. Open it. Jalen Price stood frozen behind the dessert station, his phone still recording, his pulse hammering in his ears. He had captured everything. The kneeling, the champagne, the firing. 9 minutes and 14 seconds of footage that would matter more than every check written at that gala. He didn't know it yet. Neither did Candace. The only person on that rooftop who understood what had been set in motion was the man standing by the elevator, waiting calmly for them to open his bag. Briggs unzipped the canvas duffel and turned it upside down. Everything Deacon owned at that job hit the tile floor. A dented thermos, a dog-eared copy of a James Baldwin paperback, a granola bar, half-eaten, and a photograph in a clear plastic sleeve, face down on the stone. Briggs crouched and picked through it with 2 fingers, like the items might be contagious. No syringes, no scalpels, no stolen anything. He shook the thermos, flipped the book by its spine, unfolded the granola wrapper. Nothing. Then he picked up the photograph. He held it up to the string lights. A woman in scrubs, smiling in a hospital corridor, a linen cart behind her. 3rd floor, Belcourt Medical Center, 2003. Alma Merritt, mid-law caught by a co-worker's phone before phone cameras were even good. Briggs snorted. Family tradition, huh? He flicked the photograph. It spun once and landed face down on the floor. For the first time that night, Deacon moved fast. He knelt on the tile, picked up the photograph, and wiped the dust off it with his sleeve. The champagne on his collar, the wine on his cuff, none of it had touched his once. Twice. Then he pressed the photo flat against his chest, inside the service jacket, and stood. Are we done? His voice was level. But there was gravel in it now. Briggs straightened, found nothing. Hated it. Get off the property. If I see you near this building, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. The elevator doors opened. Deacon gathered his things from the floor one by one. He did not rush. Then he stepped inside, pressed the lobby button, and the doors closed on the longest night of his life. He walked through the empty lobby and out the front entrance. The harbor air hit him warm and salt-heavy. Behind him, 9 floors up, the music swelled and the toasts resumed. He didn't look back. Back on the rooftop, Candace retook the microphone. Friends, forgive the interruption. But some mop will heal the world. Others mop the floors, so we can. And they should be grateful we let them. The phrase sat in the air like smoke. A few guests applauded because applause was easier than thinking. Dr. Lorraine Ketch did not clap. She set her napkin on the table, told her husband she needed a moment, and stood at the railing looking at the water for a very long time. 2 miles south, Deacon sat in his 12-year-old Camry in the hospital parking garage. The engine ticked as it cooled. He pulled the photo from inside his jacket and set it against the dashboard. His mother smiled at him from a hospital hallway, a lifetime away. He looked at her until the parking garage lights went to half. Then he picked up the phone. Maeve Callister answered on the first ring. She was the kind of attorney who billed in 6-minute increments and dreamed in contract law. Deacon, it's almost midnight. I know. You don't sound like a man who's sorry about that. You sound like a man who's made a decision. Move the close to tomorrow morning. First thing, and file the emergency board notice for Monday 8 a.m. executive conference room, 9th floor. 3 seconds of silence. What happened tonight? I got fired. Deacon, you own the hospital by Thursday. Tomorrow, he corrected gently. And the answer is the same woman who has been firing people like me for 8 years. I watched it from the inside for 4 months. Tonight I wore it. He touched the photo on the dashboard. I'm done watching. The Axton Group expects Thursday, Maeve said. Their counsel won't appreciate Sunday. Then make Sunday worth appreciating. Wire the accelerated signing bonus. They'll come. A keyboard began to click on her end. Papers rustled. You realize what you're asking me to execute in 30 hours? I do. You've had the documents ready for 3 weeks. A short laugh. Yes, I have. A pause. All right, Mr. Merritt. Sunday it is. One more thing before the call ended. The board notice, Maeve said. It goes out from the new majority shareholder. The moment I send it, every member of that board is going to ask who Hollowell Partners is. Deacon looked through the windshield at the concrete wall of the parking garage. Let them ask. They had 4 months to ask who I was. Nobody bothered. They have until Monday at 8 to start wondering. While Deacon drove home, Jalen Price sat on a bus bench outside the hospital, scrolling through his footage with cold hands. 9 minutes and 14 seconds, every frame sharp. He watched the champagne fall in slow motion, and his stomach turned all over again. He texted the video to 3 coworkers, 3 words, "Look at this." By the time the bus came, it had been forwarded 11 times. By Sunday morning, the video lived in 60 phones. Night nurses watched it in the break room. Orderlies watched it twice. An ER tech watched it and thought about her own mother, who had mopped schools for 30 years. Nobody posted it publicly yet. Fear has a long leash in a place that controls your health insurance. But it moved beneath the surface, hand to hand, like current under still water. Word of the video reached Briggs on Sunday afternoon. He called the catering agency and asked, very politely, for the names of every server who had worked the gala. Then he texted Candace. Some staff recorded Saturday night. Want me to handle it? Her reply took 6 seconds. Handle what? I gave a masterclass in standards. Let them watch and learn. Briggs read it twice, shrugged and finished his beer. He was paid to follow orders, not to smell smoke. At 9 on Sunday morning, in a law office above a bookshop on King Street, Deacon Merritt signed his name 43 times. The Axton Medical Trust transferred its stake. 2 pension funds followed. When the last page crossed the table, Maeve Callister capped her pen and looked at him. 58%, she said. Congratulations. You now own the hospital that fired you last night. Deacon smelled old books through the floorboards. He smiled. It doesn't smell like a hospital. What does it smell like? A beginning. At noon, the emails landed. 9 board members received the same notice from a firm none of them recognized, Hollowell Partners, LLC, new majority shareholder of Belcourt Regional Health Group, requests an emergency session. Monday, 8:00 a.m. Executive conference room. Attendance mandatory. Agenda. Leadership review. Within an hour, every phone on the board was calling every other phone. Nobody had answers. Nobody recognized the name. Nobody could find a face behind Hollowell. Dr. Lorraine Ketch read the email on her porch. Sweet tea untouched. Majority shareholder. She thought about the gala, champagne running down a man's collar, the way he had stood there afterward, spine straight, jaw set, calm as deep water. She set her glass down and said aloud to the oak tree in her yard, 8 a.m. can't get here fast enough. Candace spent her Sunday posting gala photos. She selected 14. Her favorite showed her mid-speech, arms wide, lights exploding behind her like a personal constellation. Caption: Healing happens when we give. Belcourt Gala Charity Leadership. She read the board email between posts and rolled her eyes. Leadership review. Some activist investor rattling a new set of shares. She'd eaten activist investors for breakfast before. She approved her own talking points, ordered a car for 7:30, and reviewed one more item on her Monday agenda. A $2.8 million retention bonus her compensation consultant had drafted, awaiting board approval. She fell asleep early, certain that Monday belonged to her. 12 miles away, a man in a quiet apartment ironed a charcoal suit and set his mother's photograph on the nightstand beside his cufflinks. Monday came in humid and gray, the way Charleston Mondays do in October. By 7:40, the 9th floor smelled of coffee and unease. Board members gathered in small clusters, trading theories in low voices. Dr. Ketch stood apart at the window, watching a container ship slide up the Cooper River. At 7:55, the elevator chimed. Maeve Callister stepped out first, briefcase in hand. Behind her came a man some of them almost recognized in a charcoal suit, wearing a watch with a pearl face and a scratch across the 6. Candace arrived at 7:58, white blazer, red portfolio, victory smile. She pushed through the conference room doors, talking before she looked up. Let's make this quick. I have a hospital to run. Then she stopped. The room was full and silent. 9 board members sat around the table like a jury. The chair at the head, her chair, was turned toward the window, its back to the room. A woman she had never seen stood at the foot of the table. Charcoal dress, reading glasses on a chain, a stack of documents squared in front of her. Miss Thornberry. Maeve Callister, counsel for Hollowell Partners. Please have a seat. Candace did not sit. And what exactly is Hollowell Partners? A hedge fund? A private equity stunt? Whoever you represent, you called a meeting in my conference room. Maeve opened the folder without hurry. As of 9:12 yesterday morning, Hollowell Partners completed the acquisition of 58% of Belcourt Regional Health Group, the Axton Medical Trust, the Piedmont Pension Fund, the Harbor Institutional Account, all signed, all filed, all final. She slid a single page down the table. So, with respect, Miss Thornberry, this is not your conference room anymore. Candace's eyes raced across the page. Numbers, a seal, her mouth opened, closed, and opened again. Fine. Then where is he? Your mystery investor. I'll deal with a principal, not a proxy. Maeve almost smiled. He's already here. The chair at the head of the table began to turn. It came around slowly, the leather creaking once. Morning light fell on a charcoal suit, a steady face, and a pearl-faced watch with a scratch across the 6. Good morning, Miss Thornberry, Deacon said. Sit down. You look like you've seen a ghost. The red portfolio slipped from her hand and hit the floor. For 4 full seconds, nothing in the room moved. Then she laughed, one sharp, high note, because her mind had nowhere else to land. You, how are you in this chair? Because I purchased it, along with every chair, every wing, and every job in this building, including yours. Impossible. You're a maintenance man. I was. Just long enough to see who you really are. He stood and walked the length of the table. You told 200 people on Saturday that men like me mop floors. You were right. I'm here to clean the biggest mess in this hospital. A board member at the far end said it first, almost to himself. Merritt. Trident Medical Logistics. Merritt. Deacon nodded once. I built Trident from a used van and a spreadsheet. Sold it 4 years ago for more money than I know what to do with. My mother worked this hospital for 22 years. Alma Merritt, night shift, third floor geriatrics. He set her photograph on the table facing the room. She believed this place was worth her whole life. I came to find out if she was right. He paused. So for 4 months, I pushed a utility cart where she pushed a linen cart. I wanted to see what this hospital looks like from the basement, not from a board report, not from a gala stage, from the floor. He stopped across from Candace. From the floor, I learned the night nursing pool has been cut 3 times in 2 years. I learned orderlies get written up for asking about overtime. I learned names vanish from the schedule the week after they file complaints. And Saturday night, I learned what the executive director does to a man in coveralls when she thinks nobody important is watching. Maeve lifted a small remote. The screen on the wall lit up. There it was in high definition with clean audio. The kneeling. The champagne tipped slowly all the way. He is the mop. The firing, the bag dumped on the floor, the photograph flicked away like trash. 9 minutes and 14 seconds played to a room that did not breathe. 2 board members could not watch it all. Dr. Lorraine Ketch watched every second, her hands folded in her lap, her knuckles white. When the screen went dark, Candace found her voice. That's taken out of context. It was a private fundraiser. 200 guests and a live microphone, Maeve said. Which part was private? Candace spun toward the board. You've known me for 8 years. You've seen my numbers. You cannot seriously let this. She stopped, because she finally saw their faces. 9 faces. Not one of them held anything she recognized. Dr. Ketch rose slowly with a printed document in her hand. Miss Thornberry, Section 9 of your employment agreement, the conduct clause you signed at your last renewal. She read it the way judges read sentences, slowly, clearly, without decoration. Any public behavior that causes material harm to the reputation of the institution or its personnel constitutes grounds for immediate termination for cause. She set the document down. I was at that gala. I watched you pour champagne on a man's head in front of state senators. I said nothing that night. I will not say nothing twice. The room tilted around Candace Thornberry. The bonus portfolio lay on the floor by her shoe, suddenly belonging to another life. Deacon returned to the head of the table and rested his hands on the wood. Members of the board. Hollowell Partners calls for a vote on the immediate termination of the executive director, for cause. He looked at her. You wanted an audience on Saturday, so we'll do this the same way, in the open. Candace moved through every gear she had left, fast, desperate, grasping. The laugh came first. This is theater. You hired actors. Lorraine, did he? Nobody blinked. The laugh died in her throat. Then the pivot, smooth as glass. Mr. Merritt, Deacon. Saturday was. I had been drinking. The pressure of the gala. You understand how these events become. I poured my heart into that night, into this hospital. If I had known who you were, I would never. She heard it leave her mouth. Everyone heard it. The sentence hung in the air like a signed confession. Because that is exactly what it was. Deacon nodded slowly. There it is. That's the whole problem, Miss Thornberry. You needed to know who I was before you'd treat me like a person. He tapped the photograph on the table. My mother worked here 22 years. Nobody important ever knew who she was either. Imagine how she was treated. He paused. Or, don't imagine. We just watched 9 minutes of it. Maeve called the vote. All in favor of terminating the executive director for cause, effective immediately. Dr. Ketch's hand went up first. Then the surgeon beside her. Then the next. 9 hands, one by one around the table. Maeve recorded each name. Unanimous. Termination for cause under Section 9. All severance, retention bonuses, and unvested equity are forfeit. The $2.8 million portfolio stayed on the floor. Candace's composure cracked clean through. You can't do this. I built this hospital's reputation. I am this hospital. You're welcome to litigate, Maeve said pleasantly. Discovery would include the video, the bag search, the terminated personnel files, and 8 years of charity ledger discrepancies. Please, file. Candace's mouth moved, but the math was already happening behind her eyes. Lawyers love that math. Defendants never do. Deacon turned to the door. Send in Mr. Briggs. Leon Briggs walked in with his chin up, scanning the room. He saw the photograph on the table. He saw Deacon in the chair. The chin came down by degrees like a flag being lowered. Mr. Briggs, Saturday night, you searched a man's personal property without cause, on camera, in front of 200 witnesses. You're suspended pending a full investigation. Badge and key card. On the table. Briggs looked at Candace, waiting for the order that would fix this. She didn't see him. Whatever he had been to her had mattered only while it was useful. He unclipped the badge, set it on the wood, and laid the key card beside it. 2 small clicks in a silent room. On his way out, he paused at the door, but no words came. Some men only discover their voice was borrowed when it gets repossessed. Then it was her turn. Deacon did not raise his voice. Miss Thornberry, these officers will escort you out. You may collect personal items from your office under supervision. Hospital property stays. The same 2 security guards who had flanked Briggs on Saturday night stepped forward. Her own team, the ones who used to clear hallways for her. One of them said quietly, "Ma'am, this way." The elevator ride down took 9 floors and a career. When the doors opened on the lobby, the morning shift was arriving. Receptionists, techs, 2 custodians with a cart near the east corridor. Word had already traveled the way it always does in a hospital basement first. Nobody jeered, nobody applauded. They simply stopped and watched and let her walk the full length of the marble in heels that suddenly sounded very loud. Halfway across the lobby, her heel caught the edge of a wet section of floor where a custodian had just mopped. She stumbled, caught herself on the reception counter, and steadied. A yellow sign stood beside the spot, plain and ordinary. Cushion. Wet floor. The custodian who had placed it looked away politely. Candace Thornberry straightened herself, walked the last 40 feet, and pushed through the glass doors into a city that no longer worked for her. Upstairs, the conference room exhaled. Dr. Ketch shook Deacon's hand and held it. "Your mother," she said. "I think I knew her. 3rd floor, night rotation. She used to sing." Deacon smiled for the first time that morning. Every shift. Mostly hymns. She said hospital halls carry a melody better than any church. Outside the glass, Charleston went on with its morning, not yet knowing the story it would be telling by Friday. The video surfaced Tuesday evening. A local news station ran a 40-second clip with the donors' faces blurred. By Wednesday morning, the full 9 minutes sat on every platform that mattered. By Wednesday night, the clip of champagne falling on a kneeling man had been watched 6 million times. The caption most people shared was 5 words. The janitor owned the hospital. National morning shows picked it up Thursday. They played the kneeling. They played "He is the mop." They read the Belcourt statement. 4 sentences, no adjectives, signed by the new chairman. Anchors read it twice because it said everything by saying almost nothing. Effective immediately, Candace Thornberry no longer represents this institution. Belcourt Medical Center apologizes to its employees, its patients, and every person who has ever worn its uniform. Candace's charity collapsed faster than her career. The foundation's 3 largest corporate sponsors pulled out by Friday: a pharmaceutical company, a banking group, and an insurance conglomerate, each with identical polished regret. The state senator from the Gala released a statement claiming he had attended briefly and left early. Photographs proved otherwise, and the internet took its time proving it. The Thornberry Health Foundation website went down for maintenance that weekend and never came back up. Inside the hospital, Maeve opened the books. Deacon gave her one instruction: follow everything, no matter whose signature it carries. Her team pulled 8 years of personnel files, termination records, and charity financials. They worked nights in a conference room that smelled of cold coffee and highlighter ink. People started talking. The nurses who'd been cut from night rotation filed their records. The radiology tech who had been written up for asking about overtime sent a 3-page email she'd been composing in her head for 2 years. Old fear takes time to die, but it dies faster when the man at the top once wore the coveralls. By the end of the month, the internal tip line had logged 170 messages. The pattern surfaced inside 2 weeks. 14 terminations over 8 years. Everyone a Black or Latino employee. Everyone coded as restructuring or performance. A nurse's aide dismissed 9 days after filing a discrimination report. An orderly let go 1 month before his pension vested. A receptionist terminated for attitude after questioning a pay discrepancy. 14 files, 14 careers. The same signature at the bottom of each one. C. Thornberry. The charity ledgers told their own story. The gala that raised $3.2 million for charity care had delivered less than $400,000 to any patient anywhere. The rest dissolved into event production, consulting fees, and a catering contract with a company co-owned by Candace's cousin. Maeve laid the invoices side by side on the conference table and said only one word: enough. The 14 came forward, one phone call at a time. Some were angry, some were exhausted. One, the nurse's aide, cried on the phone for a full minute before she could speak. Belcourt did not hide behind lawyers. Deacon met 11 of them in person, in the same conference room, in the same chair. Each meeting started with the same sentence: "This hospital owes you an apology, and this hospital pays its debts." For Candace personally, the law moved on 2 fronts. The 14 filed a joint civil suit naming her individually. Belcourt waived privilege on every memo she had ever written. Few spectacles in law are stranger than an institution testifying against its own former queen. Leon Briggs chose the only exit available. He sat for a sworn deposition in exchange for a reduced role in the suit. Yes, the order to search Deacon's bag came directly from Miss Thornberry. Yes, there had been other orders. Watch this employee. Build a file on that one. He listed them in a flat voice while a court reporter's keyboard clicked like rain on a tin roof. It never reached a jury. 7 months after the gala, Candace Thornberry settled everything at once. The dollar amounts stayed sealed. The conditions did not. A public apology, written and spoken on camera. Personal restitution to all 14. Repayment of every misused charity dollar. And a consent decree barring her from serving as an executive of any healthcare institution for 12 years. The apology aired on a Tuesday. Candace sat at a bare table, no jewelry, reading from a page her attorneys had approved word by word. "I treated a man as less than human because of his uniform and his role. No amount of champagne excuses that. I wasn't drunk on wine that night. I was drunk on position." For once, nobody doubted that last line was hers. There was no prison sentence, and there didn't need to be. What Candace lost was the only thing she had ever truly owned: the room, every room. The tables stopped saving her a seat. The invitations stopped arriving. The cameras pointed elsewhere. She sold the waterfront condo, left Charleston, and moved somewhere quieter, where for the first time in her adult life, she stood in line at a pharmacy like everyone else and nobody stepped aside. While her name shrank, the hospital grew lighter. Belcourt paid back every shorted hour of night nurse overtime with interest going back 6 years. Schedules stopped punishing people who filed complaints. The 14 got more than checks. 4 of them got their positions back, with promotions and back pay. The nurse's aide who had cried on the phone now managed the patient advocacy office that once erased her. And Jalen Price, the 20-year-old orderly with the steady hands, got a phone call from Maeve Callister. His footage had been licensed by every network that aired it, and the licensing revenue belonged to him. The number on the check was larger than 3 years of orderly shifts. Attached to it was a handwritten note. "You held the camera still when 200 people looked away. Belcourt would like to discuss your tuition." That fall, a healthcare journal ran the full story under a single photograph. Not of Candace, not of Deacon in the chairman's seat. The editors chose the frame from Jalen's footage. A man kneeling on a white runner, champagne shining in his hair, back straight as a flagpole. The headline ran 5 words: "He was never the mop." 6 months after the gala, the Belcourt Medical Center looked the same from Calhoun Street. Inside, almost nothing was. The front elevator and the service elevator still ran side by side, but the pay stubs writing in them had changed. Custodial staff received a 32% raise. Security, kitchen, transport, all of them. When a reporter asked Deacon why he started with the lowest paid floors, he said, "Because I've ridden both elevators. Only one of them needed fixing." There is a name for what happened at Belcourt now. New hires hear it during orientation, told simply, no slides, no music. They watch 4 minutes of the gala footage, then the board statement. A trainer stands at the front of the room and says the same thing every time. "This is the only time you will ever see a person treated this way in this building. If you see it twice, call me. If I don't act, call him." The conference room changed too. Every quarter, one seat at the table goes to a frontline worker, a custodian 1 month, a transporter the next. They don't come to listen. They come with the floor's questions, and the floor gets answers. Dr. Ketch, now lead director, calls it the cheapest consulting the hospital has ever purchased. In November, the hospital gathered in the east corridor of the 3rd floor for an unveiling. A small bronze plaque now sits on the wall at the exact spot where a night aide used to sing hymns to the linoleum. The Alma Merit Scholarship. Full tuition every year for children of hospital service workers, custodians' kids, kitchen workers' kids, transporters' kids. The first class had 8 names. The first name read aloud was Jalen Price. The Gala rooftop has a new purpose. No more auctions under the string lights. Every summer now, the terrace hosts the staff cookout. Families of 1,100 employees eating pulled pork where the jazz ensemble used to play. Kids chase each other between the planters. Nobody checks anyone's bag at the elevator. Jalen stood at the podium in his scrubs and unfolded a piece of paper he couldn't quite manage to read. He looked at Deacon instead. "You fixed Mrs. Calhoun's call button when nobody else came," he said. "I get it now. That was the whole point." It wasn't much of a speech. The corridor applauded like it was. In the back, 2 custodians leaned on their cart, and one of them pressed her glove to her eyes. And Deacon. Most mornings, if you come in early enough, you can still find him in the east corridor at 5 a.m. Suit jacket, draped over the linen cart, sleeves rolled, running a mop along the 3rd floor hallway in long, patient strokes, right beside his mother's plaque. The first time a new hire saw it, she froze and whispered to Mr. Hayward at the security desk, "Is that the chairman?" Hayward smiled. "That's the maintenance man who owns the place. Around here, those are the same thing." The watch on his wrist still has a scratch across the 6. He never had it buffed, and he never will. Some mornings he catches the light on its pearl face and hears a hymn rising from a linoleum hallway 22 years deep. Time doesn't need to be perfect for a promise to be kept. Real talk. I told this story for one reason. Somewhere tonight, somebody in scrubs or coveralls is getting talked down to by somebody in a corner office, and I need you to remember which one of them owned the room. Worth doesn't come with a title. It never did, y'all. So here's my question, and I genuinely want to know. If you were Deacon, standing on that rooftop with champagne running down your neck, knowing you could end her career with one sentence, would you have stayed silent until Monday, or would you have said it right there? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story hit you anywhere at all, share it with someone who wears a uniform to work. A custodian, a nurse's aide, a server, an orderly. Let them know somebody sees them. Then subscribe and turn on notifications, because stories like this one drop here every single week. And the next one might be about somebody you know. Until then, keep your head up and your spine straight, just like Deacon.